Aloha. I am Dr. Keone Dudley, and I want to welcome you to segment 1 of the new hurricane threat for Hawaii. This segment will teach you things you need to know about hurricanes and how they function. To begin our program, let's learn a little about hurricanes. First, how large is a hurricane? Usually they are 300 to 600 miles across, but they can be bigger. This is Hurricane Lane, the Category 5 hurricane that was headed at us in 2018. You also see the Hawaiian Islands there. It's about 1,500 miles from one end of the islands to the other. But this hurricane is big enough to completely cover over all the islands at once. Let's take note that hurricanes spin counterclockwise. So, see how this is spinning? The fact that it spins counterclockwise is going to be important to know and keep in mind. Then notice that every hurricane has an eye at its center, and that eye is open all the way down and into the sea. And the eye has a wall around it. It's called the eye wall. And this wall circulates at the highest speed in the hurricane. Notice the wind speeds in the hurricane. Out here in the blue, the winds are 20 miles per hour. The lighter blue band is moving at 30 miles an hour. As we get closer and closer to the eye, the speed of the winds is increasing. The blue-green is moving at 40 miles per hour. When we get to the green, we're at 50, then 60, 70, 80, 90. So as the eye of the hurricane moves toward you, you experience stronger and stronger winds, which are tearing everything apart. How strong are the winds in the eye wall around the eye? In a Category 1, they are between 74 and 95 miles an hour. Look at the Category 3. They are 111 to 129 miles per hour. When you get to Category 5, they are close to 160 miles per hour. As the hurricane passes over you, you go through those stronger and stronger winds until the eye reaches you. Then, all of a sudden, you are inside of the wall, inside of the eye, and it is very calm. All around you is destruction. Look at the trees with no leaves or branches. Notice the palm branch over the roof. There is no breeze. Nothing is moving. Then notice the eye wall. The only way for you to get out of this eye is for the hurricane to hit you with the backside of the eye wall, and you are going to go through all that unbelievable wind again. Let's look at the eye a little more. How wide is the eye? The smallest hurricane eyes are 20 miles wide, and they go up to as much as 40 miles wide. Oahu is 40 miles wide. If a hurricane with a 40-mile wide eye hits Oahu, everybody on the island will experience its fiercest winds and rains. Twice, reaching the eye and leaving the eye. Okay, let's leave this now and talk of other things about the hurricane. Let's note the red arrow showing where the hurricane is headed. We are going to call that the front of the hurricane. Now notice again that the winds are going counterclockwise. But do you see how, as the winds approach the front, on the right side of the eye, they get stronger and stronger? Notice at the bottom of the hurricane there, the winds are 90, but as they move around towards the front, they get to 100. Then cross the front and look as they begin to go back to the other side. They're down to 80. That's going to be important. Why? Because when the hurricane hits land, Those winds on the right side of the eye will bring with them not only the strongest winds, but also a tremendous amount of piled up ocean water called storm surge. The water in the storm surge can be 3 feet to nearly 30 feet high on top of the land. Remember now, the winds pushing the storm surge are moving counterclockwise and are on the right side of the eye. So the storm surge is only going to hit the area to the right of the eye. But the storm surge can be 50 miles wide. So say a hurricane runs up along the Waianae coast, and the eye doesn't even touch Oahu. The whole southern shore of Oahu still could be hit by storm surge because the storm surge can be 50 miles wide. Storm surge is a real threat here in Hawaii. It's important to know that you can find maps on the internet that show areas susceptible to storm surge. Finally, let's look at what happens to a hurricane when it hits land. This is Hurricane Idalia, hitting land in Florida in August of 2023. Notice that the eye is still a good bit offshore. Now, as it comes onshore, notice that the land is breaking it up. When the hurricane is at sea, it sucks up warm water from the ocean. That water gives it energy. When it hits land, the fresh water is no longer available. And without that fresh water at the bottom, it slowly falls apart and can't make the full circle. As the hurricane moves inland, it dissipates and finally disappears. Now we've talked about the winds and the storm surge that a hurricane will bring. We need to mention that hurricanes sometimes bring tornadoes with them. The last thing I want to talk about is the rain. This is another huge thing to fear because of our mountains and the water that will come off of them. Hurricanes usually bring between 6 inches and 1 foot of rain. But if the hurricane stalls, it can bring much more. Hurricanes have been known to bring up to 5 feet of rain, and we aren't prepared for it, and it will kill so many. What happens to the water when a huge mountain gets pummeled with hurricane rains at every level? The water rushes down everywhere. What happens to roadways? What happens to the towns below? This water coming off the hill covers half of the first stories of these buildings in town. Will they survive? We live on islands with high mountains. How can we find out about flooding of homes on hillsides and beneath hillsides during heavy hurricane rainfall? In too many cases, we can't find out. The rainfall maps that have been made don't include hurricane rain. See that street coming straight down in the middle of that hill? That's Wilhelmina Rise in Kaimuki. How much water will be coming down that street? Where will it go? The FEMA studies say that it will be minimal, but that's in regular storms. Is there any possibility in the world that in a hurricane, water coming down that street will be minimal? It's time for emergency management departments in our government to really get to work mapping hurricane flood areas and then telling the people where to find those maps. It's time for our Congress and legislature and county councils to get the agencies the money to get the job done. It's time for us to vote for people who will get the needed money to those departments. We need to know what to expect in a hurricane. In closing, I want to thank the Makakilo Kapolei Honokai Hale Neighborhood Board for bringing together the experts that we have heard today. I want to thank Olelo Community Media for helping us to reshoot the entire program. I want to thank Kareen Makahilahila for her marvelous job in editing this with me. I want to thank the nonprofit 2050 Hawaii Incorporated for sponsoring the program. And I want to thank Tesla Solar for funding its creation. Finally, I dedicate this program to my wife, Doris Sadako Dudley. You may want to see this program again. It can be found on the Olelo website and on YouTube. Thank you very much for watching. Aloha.